So all I'm going to do today is I'm just going over some of the new features that are in StorLogix 5. We thought it would be important to cover these, kind of get you guys up to speed on what's coming. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over this for everybody else who wants to watch. Big things with 5.0. So we've got the new Easy Code, which allows self-storage customers to use their phones to get access to the facility through their gates and doors. Pretty cool new feature. And we've got the new DXT mode where you can use your Digitech devices with a Falcon XT. One of the questions I was asked earlier was, could you mix and match? And in StorLogix, you can have, let's say you have a local site with Digitech remotes and you have a remote annex site with PTI remotes. That's fine because that's two sites in StorLogix. Where you can't cross over is you can't have an XT with both Digitech and PTI keypads or other devices connected to it at the same time. So if a customer, for whatever reason, they've got Digi keypads and they want to switch to PTI, they've got to switch out everything in order to do that. Another important distinction with the Digitech mode in StorLogix is that you're limited only to the classic view. So you're not actually able to get into the StorLogix view. Now part of that means in StorLogix we had to go in and add some other menu items in here just so that you could do more things in the classic view. For instance, like under the file menu, we had to add a new menu option for adding a newer remote site because previously in the classic view you had no way to get to that, and so this allows you to do that function now. So along with Easy Code, something we've included in the software is the new Easy Code menu here in StorLogix. And the first thing I want to talk about is this new Easy Code Access Tester, because I think this is going to be a great help. Essentially what this does is it allows you to virtually test codes at different keypads. You don't have to have an Easy Code subscription or anything to use this. This is just part of the software that happens to bear the Easy Code name because it does the same thing that Easy Code does. So what you can do in here is you can see on the left side here we've got a list of all of our users, and right now they're all grayed out. Well, that means that right now their Easy Code access is disabled, and if you want to enable it for somebody, you can come in here and just right click and you can say, well, hey, this guy can use Easy Code now. And then what you'll see is that he's now just normal text in here instead of being grayed out. And the other thing you'll notice is when you click on different names that the code over here in this view changes. All we're doing here is filling in a code and a PIN number based on that user account. That's really all it is. And if you want to just try whatever code here, you can put in whatever you want. It just allows you to test codes fairly easily. So here in the devices, you can see I've already got a bunch of devices set up. Normally, you can go to the setup menu here, and you can choose which devices you want to enable for Easy Code. It makes just doing this setup really fast. Now, if you wanted to dig down into AI device properties and do this, you can do that. There's a allowed for Easy Code setting both in the user and in the AI devices that you can turn on. That essentially is the same settings that I've been manipulating here in the screen. So once you've got some set up, you can pick a device. So I'm going to try this guy Clark, and I'm going to put in his code and click test. And then here in the background, my XT and a bunch of relays just tripped. And you can see I got the notice that his unit alarm was disabled. And then here in just a second, you'll see the entry event here in this short log. And all this log is just recent access events. So it's kind of a really filtered down event log. So now you can see that his entry event here came into the event log, so we know that his code works. You can see the two events we'd expect to see. And you can do the same thing for an exit. If you want to test the exit device, send another access request. It'll trip the relays on the keypads and everything back here. And you can see his alarm was enabled here in the pop-up. And we got a known code card entered and a granted exit event here in the log. So that's really all this does. If you want to try it with other things, you can test it with suspended users, and it'll come back and give you, these denied user access suspended events. You can try your own codes. You'll get unknown code card entered. It's just a really neat and easy function to be able to troubleshoot with StorLogix. So just to give you a quick glimpse of where these settings are if you're looking for them in StorLogix otherwise, you're going to go into Edit User, and then go into the person you want to change. And then here, right here, this is the Authorized to Use Easy Code setting. And right now it's on because I turned it on in the little screen for Easy Code. And then down in AI Device Properties, you got to turn on the Advanced. And then right here you've got Allow Use with Easy Code. That's all you got to do to get it to work. Next thing I want to talk about is changes to Logix Server. As you guys may or may not know, Logix Server is now a service with StorLogix 5, like the StorLogix interface. And so with that, we've had to make some changes to the way the user interface works. The dashboard is now your primary interface for dealing with Logix Server and working with it. The dashboard can be running or not running, doesn't matter. The Logix Server service just continues to run in the background on its own, irregardless of what the user interface is doing, just like with the StorLogix interface. Part of what we've added in the dashboard is some new indicators. So you've got now in the online status here, it shows you what version the firmware is. And this is mainly because we don't have a help about screen anymore that you can pull up in Logix Server. The main file menu options are the same as they were in the previous versions. They still work the same way. But the other thing you'll notice now is this new options button here on the dashboard for each site. And I only have one right now, but if I had more, there would be a bunch of these. If you click on options, this is your Logix Server menu for this Logix Server. So here's where you can get into the setup, change your time zone settings, whether or not it needs to show the last user details for this one. And an important note on last user details is they do show when the dashboard is running. And as you can see, there's a icon down here in the tray for the dashboard. And this will actually show the user notifications for every site running in the dashboard now, as long as that option is checked right here under the setup. You also have your tools for setting your date and time and for validating firmware. There's no mechanism in this version of Logix Server to do a manual firmware update. Those have to be done through the bootloader now if you need to roll back for any reason. Going forward, let's say you're going from version 6.25 to 6.26, all you'd have to do is put the 6.26 in the firmware folder, come into the dashboard and click on Validate Firmware, and it would just start doing the update for you. So you don't have to mess around with anything there. Your send all is here, and then under Advanced, there are some options here to restart this Logix Server, and really all that's going to do is just restart this thread in the service rather than having to restart the whole service, especially if you have a bunch of sites. This is a good way just to restart this one Logix Server that's running in the service. You can also restart the XT from here as long as everything's online and communicating. And then temporarily stop managing. It works just like it used to. When you turn this on, this Logix Server is basically going to go offline and quit running for a while until you turn this option back on. And that's all there is for the new version of Logix Server. So another new feature in StorLogix 5 is the ability to set the site name on the Apex. Now if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, let me try and hold up an Apex here so you can see. But if you watch this here for a second, you should see that it's showing, I believe it's Falcon XT right now for the site name. All right, so it says welcome to Falcon XT. On the default Apex, it would say, welcome to your storage facility. So what we've done now is when you start up version 5, it's going to come up and say, hey, we've included this new feature. Would you like to see what the setting currently is? And it's going to give you a little prompt and give you a chance to change that setting when you start it up. If you want to change it later, you come into the Falcon XT settings and you just change this description right here. So we'll make this we'll just make it nice and long, and I'll go ahead and save that. And then what's going to happen is at the top of the minute, the XT is going to go out and just push that out to any Apex devices that are on the system. So what you can see here, now that I've done that change, is that it's showing welcome to PTI Security Systems Asheville. So it's pretty quick and easy way to do it, because I know customers tend to freak out about, oh, I got to do what to go change that, because it's really complicated to do it through the menu. So this just overwrites anything that doing it through the menu would do. The other thing you can do on the Apex now is, again, in AI device properties, you can set up a custom promo message. And a promo message on Apex actually adds a third screen with another message on it. And when you go into AI device properties, you're going to come down here to set up devices promo message. Again, this is only available on Apexes. I believe it's also available on the 700LC keypad. But you can click here to set the promo message. And we'll just go ahead and turn this on. You'll notice there's also an apply to all function in here. And what this is just a quick way to say, hey, I just want this message on all of my devices all the same way. So when we click done, go ahead and click save on here. And then what you see here is that the Apex will come up and show you the new fancy promo message. It's just a really easy way to set that up for people if they want to use it. Again, it's just per device, so it's not like you can set it for a user or anything. If you want to do that, you're going to use the custom messages. Another new feature in StorLogix has to do with the alerts, and it's down in the event groups. We've added a new feature where you can set a schedule, as you can see here, for the email alerts. Some customers may only want to receive email alerts when they're not in the office. So for that kind of scenario, we would come in here and say, okay, well, this group is only going to receive email alerts after the schedule. And you say, well, let's assign it to business hours. And so anytime outside of business hours, they will get email alerts. Anytime during business hours, they won't get anything. Now, if they want to receive messages only during business hours, you need to set it only during schedule. Otherwise, you could say, I just want them all the time. You can just set it to any time, and that will allow that to work correctly, or like it used to. Automatic updates are back in the system and working. Those are just on the help menu under check for updates. And this is just making it easier for us to roll out updates and patches to our customers. It's going to give them a screen of release notes and just ask them, do you want to install this one? Do you want to skip this one? Or do you want, just remind me later? Maybe they don't have time at the moment. Another new feature in here that you guys may not know about is the new reports. Down here in the reports exceptions menu, we've added a new loitering and suspicious activity report. And these reports are really for looking for activity that's outside the norm. So let me go ahead and give you a quick example. I'm going to go ahead and let's make sure my guy is off-site. So he left at about 3:04. That's fine. So we're going to look at loitering report first. And I'm just going to look at the one for today, since I have activity for today. Again, it's going to come up, ask you for a date, and then it's going to ask you for the number of hours. What this means is, how many hours does somebody have to be on site to consider them loitering? So in here, they can customize it each time they run the report. The default is 6 hours. I'm going to drop it down to a quarter hour, just so we can get some results in here. Hit OK. And then what you're going to see here, get this zoomed in a little bit, is it gives me a loitering past a quarter hour by date, which shows the current date and time. And what you're going to get is a list of users that are going to be ordered by their name. It's going to show all the units they're rented to. And then it's going to give you, this is what time they came in, this is what time they left, and they were on site for, in this case, 20 minutes and 32 seconds. So it's a good way for managers to see if there's people hanging around longer than they should be, especially after hours and things like that. And then speaking of after hours, the other report is suspicious activity. And this is where you're looking for activity outside of a given time frame. So let's go ahead and look for today's date. And you can see here that by default it says, okay, show me anybody who came into or left the property between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And you can shorten that up, you can lengthen it. I'm going to change this to 10:45, again, just to give you guys an example of what you'll get. And you can see here I got a couple of results from that. So you can see I had Clark and Price here who came in between the times that I specified, or they exited between those times. It's a good way to see, like, if there's somebody living on the property and they're leaving before the manager arrives in the morning, then this gives you a kind of a snapshot to capture that. It's a really good report for that. Another thing we've done in StorLogix is, I know you guys are familiar with the purge events setting. Normally this is set to 180 days. This is where we would go into the database and say, okay, after 180 days, just wipe out all the data. Well, what we've done in 5.0, and some of this also applies to 4.1.7.2, is we've gone through and made some dramatic improvements to our StorLogix database by removing a lot of the bloat that's in the database, either from indexes or other things like that. And right now, on average, we're seeing that with a typical StorLogix database, you put this update in, and the database becomes about a third the size that it was. So let's say I started with a database that was 3.5 gigabytes. After I run this update, it's hovering right around 1 gigabyte. So it's a really dramatic improvements as far as storage and size of the database. Along with that, what we're doing now is we're saying, okay, up to 180 days, we're going to keep everything in the log. Then after 180 days, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, anything that's in, let's say, controller access events, controller alarm events, or in the controller card input events, those events now are kept forever. And they're a very small subset of the total number of events we deal with in StorLogix, so they don't take up a lot of space. But those are going to be kept indefinitely. We're never going to delete those ever. Beyond that, what we're doing is saying, okay, now, based on your events to view, anything that you have in here that's set to, yes, show this in the event viewer, those events will be kept as well. Anything that's set to no is going to get deleted after the 180 days. The other thing we're doing is looking at our StorLogix events. You've seen it when you look in troubleshooting mode. See all the set user, set unit stuff from the interface, as well as all these click events from within StorLogix as you're doing things. Everything like that is deleted no matter what. You can't save them at all because they represent a large portion of the events that we deal with in StorLogix, and they really have no meaning other than for an audit trail, which generally after 180 days, nobody's looking for how did you use StorLogix. They're looking for, well, did Joe come in on the 15th of April and what did he do? So we're just getting rid of that stuff, and it keeps the size of the event log really, really small and a lot more manageable, in addition to the other size improvements that we've already made to the system. One of the things we need to look at here is some changes we've made to the StorLogix interface. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up real quick. And for the most part, the user interface still looks the same. It's kind of when you get into the settings that you'll notice there's a little bit of different information here. The first few settings, same as they've always been. Your software, your preprocessor, all that. as well as these first two options for leaving unit names alone and converting trailing Q through Z's. A new option that's in here now is this do not use unit name when first name is not supplied by management software, where they don't send us a first name, we just get a last name. This gives the user the option to not have that 001 show up as a first name for like my guy Clark that I've been doing the demo with. Basically he would just come in as Clark. Now the drawback to this is the way it used to work in the older management interface, and we can't differentiate between Smith in A101 and another guy named Smith in unit C15. So they're going to end up as the same user in StorLogix if you have this setting turned off. Or, I'm sorry, if you have this setting turned on. Another new setting in here, this is for different municipalities that require it, is to not suspend a user that has multiple units until all of their units have been suspended. There's just certain places that require this, so we've added this feature to help support them in a law-abiding manner. It's pretty self-explanatory. If they have 2 units and one of them gets suspended, they can still get into the property until that second unit gets suspended, and then their user will actually be suspended at that point. And the last new feature in here is allow multiple codes on a single unit. What this means is, again, kind of make it work the old way, where in the management interface 3.1 and earlier, if you had multiple codes for the same person come through the interface, it would add those codes into the system. What happened in 4.1 is we changed how that worked, and multiple codes coming in through the interface just changed the one code that the user had. If you turn this on, their management software supports having multiple codes on a single unit, then this will allow StorLogix to support that so they can have a bunch of codes if they need to. But again, you can't change a user's code in the system without first vacating them if you have this turned on, or unless you manually delete the code out of StorLogix. Then a couple other quick overrides. There's an override for PayExpress now. So if they're using a management software that doesn't support our interface for PayExpress, as far as sending the flags, then you can say, well, I want it on for everybody, or I want it off for everybody, however they want to do it. If you use the default, we just use whatever comes through in the file. EasyCode also has an extended parameter setting in the interface file now. So if you have a customer that's using EasyCode, you're going to want to come in and turn this on so that anybody who comes through the interface, EasyCode is automatically active for them. It saves the manager having to go through and activate them every time they do an update from their management software. Then the last thing I want to talk about is some new security level settings that we've put into StorLogix 5. First one being here in the security level setup under user operations. There's this new option to show access codes. And what this is we received a request from some of our customers where they wanted to be able to mask out access codes in the system. Perhaps they don't want their managers to be able to see them for whatever reason. Doesn't matter to us. We've gone ahead and accommodated that. So what I'll do real quick is I'm just going to restart StorLogix with a lower level operator so that you can see kind of what this does in the system. And it doesn't remove the access codes, it just it's going to put a mask in here and replace them all. So there's no way you can actually get at them. We'll load up the edit user wizard here so you can see. And now you see all the access codes are just masked out. And even when you go into edit, you can't really see what it is. Try to see the details, it's masked out. The only time they'd actually be able to see one is if they go ahead and add one in here, but if they save it and come back, it's going to be masked out just like it wasn't there. This also affects the EasyCode access tester in that when this security level is on, clicking on people here on the left side doesn't pre-fill their access code and information. So if they needed to test a code, or you guys needed to test a code, you'd have to know what code you're going to put in here because it's not going to pre-fill anything. Along with that, we've added security level settings for individual reports, so that now you can see the reports menu here has all of the reports in the system. You can turn them on and off individually, whereas previously it was just this one setting that said either you have access to reports or you don't. So now you can turn on and off individual reports as needed, and you see here in the menu that the reports I don't have access to are grayed out. So that's it for kind of the basic overview of what's new in StorLogix 5. Again, if you guys have questions or just not sure about how a feature works, just let us know and we'll do our best to explain it. Thanks.